Paul is busy signing books, which we'll all have time for afterwards. But hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Kranseler, and I am the director of the Washington State Jewish Historical Society. I want to say thank you to everyone for being here tonight. Thank you. And before I introduce our fabulous speakers, I want to thank Davis Wright Tremaine for hosting this event in their beautiful office here. And thank you to my brother, Jeff Coopersmith, one of my two best brothers, for agreeing to host tonight's event and for opening up your office to us. Thanks again also to all the Davis Wright Tremaine employees, especially Lisa Waybeck, for all of her support in making this possible. And some of our board members are here tonight. If they want to stand, Dennis Goldstein, our board president.
Thank you.
Ron Walbaum, our board treasurer. Jeremy Ehrlich, our board secretary. And board members Zach Mosner, Harvey Grad, Sidney Dreidel. Who else do we have? Anyone else? I think I've got everyone. And our wonderful staff is here if anyone has any questions. Shmuel and Sarah and volunteer extraordinaire Lori. I want to take just a moment to talk about the work of the Washington State Jewish Historical Society. Last year was our 50th anniversary year, and we celebrated with an Agent of Change exhibit about women. We featured 20 remarkable Jewish women in Washington State, of which there are many, many more. And we, this exhibit was also at MoHI and is now at the State History Museum in Tacoma. Great. So we're very appreciative of that. And we are going to continue our conversation about women and feature many more women over the next year or two. So we look forward to that. In honor of this month, May, it's Jewish American Heritage Month. And we are just proud to put on this History Happy Hour. We are also celebrated by launching our digital museum. And it's the only Jewish history museum in the state. And it's online, and I encourage you to check out our website. Our flyers are all around, and you can access many things, and we're going to be taking a lot of input for that museum as well, new exhibits. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention tomorrow is Give Big Day. We're excited to be a part of that this year, along with the many wonderful not-for-profit organizations. And I encourage you to give big from your heart to, of course, to us, but to whatever organization you support. And now for the part of introducing tonight's speakers, who almost need no introduction. The reason you all came tonight, we're truly honored to have Paul Dorpat, famous Seattle historian, and Jean Sherrard as the speakers, and last week the Association of King County Historical Organizations honored them with the book award for the year, so for their new book. So
Thank you very much.
So thank you for being here. And Clay Eals is the editor, the book editor, and Clay and I go way back with the OCCHO organization. So thank you, Clay, for making this possible. You can get an autographed copy afterwards, and we look forward to hearing from Jean and Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's test our microphones. Are we working? Can you hear?
Yeah.
You want to test yours, Paul? See if it works.
Hello.
Yeah.
You're
Hello,
close.
stuff.
Can you
Hello,
hear us
hello,
okay?
hello.
No, it's you're attached. You're attached. It's a lot better.
Hello. These modern inventions, you know.
Well, this book has an interesting story, and it begins with Mr. Dorpat 37 years ago. January 17th, 1982, Paul wrote his first column, and he's written more than 1,800 more over the intervening years in the Times. And so last fall, we were supposed to get a book from China, several thousand copies of it, and we managed to get the copies quite late because we were in a little trade war, which looks like it might be, kicking in again. But we at the very last minute, we got the book, I think it was in the stores in the first week of December, and we sold the better part of 5,000 copies in 3 weeks. So we did. Isn't that amazing?
Wonderful.
So we only have... Huh?
Did they pay you, Paul?
They will.
Paul is being modest, but he's the only person who's been paid so far. He got a new computer, which he hates.
How much did it cost?
Like $2,000.
$2,000. Sitting pretty good.
So we're the beginning of every one of these shows, and right now you're our 32nd since Paul's birthday, which was October 28th, when he turned 80.
I could very easily fall asleep here tonight. Anybody coffee? We got coffee over there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
There is. I'll bring you some halfway through, Paul. So we begin every show with a little mini biography of Paul, and we have to start with a particular event here. Let's see if we can just.
This is Your Life, a program for all Americans. And now here he is, Mr. This Is Your Life himself, Ralph Edwards.
That looks like the new judge with the Supreme Court.
I don't think I look anything like Kavanaugh. Well, this is Paul in North Dakota at the age of 4.
Yeah, saving the world for democracy. That's actually what I was doing in the backyard. My dad was a Lutheran preacher, sort of the bishop of the town, the big church. And we lived in a big old house on Reeves Drive overlooking the Red River, which was quite delightful. I'm adding new information so you can enjoy this.
Well, here's Paul with his 3 brothers. They were an all guy family except for their mom. I just was reflecting on this. We both came from all boy families.
I know.
And my father went 4 generations before he saw a granddaughter. It was he died several months ago, but she was the light of his life. But look at these 4 boys.
Yeah.
Which is the handsome one, Paul?
I think the baby.
Wait, are you the baby?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Norm up in the upper right-hand corner, he has beautiful eyes. Doesn't he have beautiful eyes, the one up in the upper right-hand corner?
Yeah.
All right, well, we could vote on that.
So the family moved to Spokane. And here are the brothers all standing. This is about 12, 13 years ago, and Paul was the only one.
Did you come with me that day?
I did. I took this photo.
Wonderful.
You're wearing your Mama Little's t-shirt.
You were preparing for this lecture then? All right. Okay.
And of course, you look at it's the fellow with the wine. Dave has the wine glass. So the handsome guy has the glass of wine.
Oh, that's Norm, yeah.
That's Norm.
Now, some of you may have needed psychiatric care in the last 40 years, and you might have gone to my brother on the far left, Ted, who was at the Blakely Psychiatric Clinic down by the university. Any of you were his patients? We're not getting any response.
My dad went to medical school at the UW and had to take a class from Ted. And he said it was the only class he really, really hated.
Wanted to go. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to tell Ted that. Oh, boy.
So here's Paul with his dad, Theodore,
Yeah.
the Reverend, and his mom, Cherry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we jump forward now a number of years. Paul is now in his, 30s? Are you in your
I'm
30s?
80 years old. You just said that a little while. Have you forgotten that?
No, I'm looking at this image on the screen. We're looking at the helix.
That's right. He's 31 or so.
31, and Paul became the editor of the Helix. And as a kid, I grew up in Seattle. I'm not a native. I was born in Renton. And I grew up in Seattle. And as a kid of 10 or 11, I would offend my mother by taking back covers of the Helix and putting them on the wall.
His mother was a saint, really. She was quite wonderful. She started the school. She and her dad, his dad rather, started the school, Hillside. You know about Hillside?
Young Matt
Raise
Cooper.
your hand if you know about the Hillside. You guys haven't been doing very good PR.
No. I think you'll
Really a
get us-
wonderful school. It's anyway, they started the school basically for their own kids, and then it became a very celebrated school for its academic distinctions, and it still is.
So Paul, out of the Helix, started to produce rock and roll, and he created the Sky River Rock Festival. And if you look at some of the names on this rock festival list,
Yeah.
you might recognize a few, but it was in fact, in 1968, Labor Day weekend, the first multi-day outdoor rock festival held on a farm, a year before Woodstock,
That's quite limiting.
with people named Charlie.
Anyway, what are you showing here? Oh, you're showing the mud picture?
I'm showing it, it's right here, it's on the
How
screen.
about the mud picture?
Oh, we're coming up, don't we?
Okay.
All right, so here's Paul at the festival wearing his saffron robes, and he's being visited by Tom Robbins.
Now, you know Tom Robbins? Yeah, okay. You don't know my brother, but you know Tom Robbins. But honestly, is there any justice? That's my girlfriend on the lower right-hand corner there. Did you say woo-woo? She is kind of cute, isn't she? Okay.
Well, what distinguished Sky River, and it was nicknamed Mud River, because for most of the weekend it rained. And there was a moment when the sun came out. Did anyone go to Mud River? Are there any?
Yeah, I want
attendees?
to ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't mean to be offensive. I've never heard the expression Mud River before. Did you make that up?
No. I've heard a dozen people talk about Mud
All
River,
right, that's okay.
including your friend Bill Burton.
Yeah. Okay, let me get straight out here.
I think the closest we've come is one member in the last 32 audiences, one member of an audience at Mohi, or I think it was at Mohi, said, "Oh yeah, I'm in the crowd on the hill."
Must be a word. Okay.
So another 10 years pass, and Paul is now entering a new life as a public historian. I feel like I'm preparing you for introducing you to your bride or something.
You mean, what was the name of that show? This Is Your Life?
Yeah, this is your life. Yeah. So, 294
Well, that's
glimpses
what
of.
you said, that's what you called it.
That's what I started off with. 294 glimpses of historic Seattle, which they sold for a penny a glimpse. So it was $2.94, and I think
$2.94.
and I think you sold many thousands. How many thousands?
Over 40. Yeah.
This was before there was.
That's honest. That's an honest count.
Is this 1980?
Booksellers make dishonest counts regularly, but that's an honest
I
count.
think this is 81, isn't it? It's like 6 months before you start the column.
81, I guess, yeah. Yeah.
And coming out of this, well, here's Paul standing with the author of Skid Row, Murray Morgan.
How many of you know Murray Morgan? No, okay, raise your hand if you do not know Murray Morgan. Raise your hand. Shame on you. He wrote Skid Row. It's an elegant, beautiful, beautiful narrative of Seattle history. And you'll get a little bit of Bellevue in there too. How many of you live in Bellevue? How many of you live out of Bellevue? All right. Oh, that's right, this is the Historic Association, see?
We're still in Seattle.
You're right. I thought we were in Bellevue.
It's because we can see Bellevue.
That's it.
We're just looking at Bellevue.
We're in Bellevue,
It's a view, and Paul said, well, we're in Bellevue.
Sorry.
The last time he was this high, we were doing a show in about 20 floors up at the Bellevue Rotary Club. So that's, I think, maybe you're flashing You're having a flashback?
I am, perhaps, yeah.
Well, this is Lucy Coe Campbell, whom Paul interviewed in the mid-'80s, and she was well into her 90s, and she was a witness as a young child of the Seattle fire.
1889. I met 4 people who had seen the fire when I was a lot younger. Huh?
I said, did you?
Yeah, 4. 4 different people. They were ancient, but
And they were all women.
they were all women. Every one of them. So let that be a lesson to you, you guys. You got the wrong sex for longevity. Too bad.
Well, you and I do.
No, we're out of here pretty soon. I am out of here, but I don't know, you'll be around for a while.
Well, in about 2011, Paul and I were joined by our friend Beranger Lamont, and we did a show at Mohi, in the old Mohi, before they moved down near South
Somewhere down here.
somewhere down below us.
Yeah.
And the show was just called Now and Then. Featured the last book we did together, which was Washington Then and Now. And in the foyer, Beranger took a number of photos of Paris and did kind of a little now and then treat as you walk through to see the old Paris shots and with BB's modern shots. And a lot of those old Paris shots have been shot by Paul when he was 16 years old and traveled to post-war Paris.
That's pretty talented, yeah.
Here we are standing with Beranger on Paul's porch.
I was a delegate for a YMCA group, but it wasn't called YMCA, and there were thousands of people there at the Cité Universitaire, and practically none of us went to the meetings. We all went out walking around Paris. So we had a really good time.
Here we are with Beranger on the back porch. This is 2011, and I bring this up because we have a wonderful moment from Paul's history, which we managed to videotape, and it was totally unexpected, but I excerpted it. It's from our one visit, Paul's one visit returning to Paris in 2005, and he happens to meet someone rather interesting on the trip. So let's just take a look at this is about a minute, and we will watch as Paul goes into the streets of Paris.
I hope this doesn't scare you.
Oh, that's incredible. He looks very much like me, doesn't he? He does. With the glasses, with the glasses. Here we go. Take this video. Okay. Sit down. Okay.
So we start to walk away, and Beranger, Herbert the photographer, says, "No, go back, I need to get a better shot." So Paul returns, and for a moment I cut out most of my jiggling, but I had the video camera in my hand, and I just could not stop laughing. So you'll see as the camera bounces around, look at this guy. Now look at Paul. Now we can close with the two of them giving the camera. How often does anyone meet their absolute doppelganger? It's amazing. So here's the picture that Beranger took with the camera of the two of them side by side. She went back several years later and discovered that this guy was a Romanian Orthodox priest. And he received an award in the 5th arrondissement of Paris for the restoration of his church.
It looks just like you.
So,
So he's a friend now, right?
yeah. Well, let's get into the book, and we're going to start with Paul's first column, which came out, I think, the 17th of January, 1982. And this is a shot of the 63rd Coastal Artillery downtown Seattle, and you're looking at the corner of 4th and Pike, which is Westlake. And they have just returned, it's 1919, and they have just returned from the First World War to an enormous welcome downtown. And part of my job over the last couple of years in trying to repeat these old photos for the book, because Paul did this, it was his very first column, and so it was, the plan was that I would go back and repeat 100 or so columns on a whole variety of subjects throughout the 37 years of the column.
Well, what the plan was also, he got to choose which ones he would go back and repeat. In other words, the ones in the book are pretty much his choices, which gave him the opportunity to choose historic subjects that he knew he would have a good time repeating with contemporary subjects, which was pretty decent of me, I'd say.
Okay.
Well,
So we had to begin.
They also were all in full color, which is different from the way that Paul had shot and was printed in the Seattle Times
I
in
didn't
the
like
early
color,
years.
that's true. I didn't like color, that's good.
And the Times, I think the Times granted us color about 4 years ago, so
Yeah.
with their new and smaller magazine. So this is, I took it upon myself as a mission to try to come up with repeats that would acknowledge the original and the focus and the themes and the significance of the original in one way or another. And I returned to this corner on January 21st, 2017, for the largest march in Seattle history, which was the Women's March.
How many of you were, any of you at the Women's March? Well, I know you would be. Anybody else? Good way to go. Yeah, it was, how was it?
Crowded.
Huh?
It was great.
Crowded, but did you have a good time? Yeah, wonderful.
And this is the original photo that Paul took that was published in the Times. So looking down at that same corner, and he found a barista, even in '82, to hold the photo up and give you a look.
She didn't give me a coffee, though.
Here's how that first, the column appears, columns appear consecutively in the book. So 100 columns spread out over 37 years. This is the first column in the book. The last one was taken on the Ave.
More than 37 years.
82 to 2019, isn't that 37? We just, we're in our 38th
I
year.
tell you, I really get demented. I can't handle numbers. I'm sorry, you're right.
Okay. Well, it's a significant, so this is the first column in the book.
Yeah.
It's followed soon after by a column that Paul also did in '82. He really ran through some extraordinary
Classics.
classics of Seattle history. This one is from 1880, and it's Seattle's deepest snow after the 1916 snow that collapsed the dome of St. James
Before it.
Before, I mean, it's the deepest snow, yeah. The second deepest is 1916.
Right.
So here we are, we're looking at Yesler's Hall in the right foreground. And up behind him, the snow, I think, began on January 4th, 1880. And it began on Monday, the day after in the paper, Elijah Ferry was quoted with the State of the Territory address saying that Seattle weather was perfect for all who would come to visit, and that it never snowed here and was kind and clement.
Puget Sound was called the Mediterranean of the West.
So the day after that statement appeared in the paper, it began to snow. It snowed for 8 days and 64 inches. So
Because there weren't any cars.
it was fortunate
Because there
there were.
was no cars.
There were no cars, no.
Well, I went back to this same spot, which is First and Cherry, or Front Street and Cherry. And I went back to this same spot and I found a snow but sadly not much of one. I really tried for the past 3 years to get to First and Cherry when there was a big snow, and all I can say is that there is a little pile. You know, and the flakes.
Let's give him a little pause for that. Really good.
So the story of the book is the modern photos. Sometimes I was successful, and other times it took me a little bit longer to find a suitable. Well, this is a classic from the late 1890s, looking southeast on the Seattle docks, and we're standing with our back to Pike Street. And this is the great Norwegian photographer Anders Vilse, who came to town for a few years and shot some magnificent portraits of the city right around Gold Rush era. And this is looking towards one of the ice houses in Seattle. Today, there's for Matt's dad, there is some of my Hillside Elementary kids who are exploring Seattle history down on the waterfront. And already, this was taken a little more than a year ago, last spring, and already, of course, the viaduct is in pieces.
Look at the viaduct. Do you remember the viaduct? Very good, Gene.
We're looking north now on the waterfront. This is 1898, 99. In that winter, of that 6-month period, about more than 100 vessels went from Seattle to the Yukon during this gold rush. And there's a wonderful little sign, you might be able to see it in the screen, that reads, "Portable aluminum houses perfect for Alaska, weight 150 pounds. And I think of that marvelous scene in Charlie Chaplin's Gold Rush, when the miners, or who were actually homeless guys in California, were climbing up the hill at Truckee, substituting, but you just imagine them carrying these 150-pound aluminum refrigerators on their backs.
What did they use for a hill in that movie?
The mountains above Truckee in California, the Sierra, wherever that is, Sierra Nevada. Is that right?
Yes,
I don't know this.
yeah.
Oh, that's a
It's
big
substituted
place
for
here in
Chilkoot
Nevada.
Pass.
Yes,
I'm asking for a more specific description of where the mountain.
Anderson Pass. It was Anderson Pass.
That's the Olympics.
Truckee is at the north end of Lake Tahoe.
What's that?
Truckee's
Truckee
the.
is at the north end of Lake Tahoe.
They shot it just near where the Donner Party got stuck. Isn't Truckee close to the Donner
It's
Party?
sort of close to it. Yeah. Oh, good
So
for you.
today-
I thought I had you stumped there, but you came out on top. I'll have to come up with another one.
Today we're standing right in front of Coleman Dock, and in the last few months, parking has been disappeared on what was Alaskan Way. And looking down this scene, most of the viaduct in front of us here is gone. It's really, in fact, I told Paul we'd have to make a trip down tonight so we could take a look. One funny story is that the railway that comes through the tunnel onto the waterfront still has, what would you call it, right-of-way, eminent domain?
Something like that.
Something like that. They have insisted that no deconstruction of the viaduct be done outside of a 6-hour window per week. So they have allowed for the viaduct to slowly be torn down between midnight and 6 in the morning on Sunday mornings. And that's it. The rest of the week, no one can touch anything close to the tracks, because then they give them this 6-hour window. And I was talking to the Bob Donegan, who's with Ivars, and he said, it's probably pushed us down into September. And in part, it's the delays from dealing with the
You mean opening?
recalcitrant railway. So.
Why was that?
They're just selfish bastards. They don't. It's the rail system. We've always had a little battle about railways, as all of you know. So
They worked very hard to get that power a century ago.
yes, they
And
did.
they've been wanting to use it for a long time.
So they were having meetings over the head. Well, Anders Vilsen, who took those last two photos, returned to Norway and became sort of the Aschel Curtis of Norway, and spent 30 years taking magnificent photos of the landscape and the people. And in 2015, many of his pictures were commemorating stamps. And I think 14, what do they use in Norway? Kroner? What do they use?
Anybody know what the
Kroner.
Kroner
I think
is?
it's Kroner, yeah.
Okay.
I think 14 kroner is like $8,000 or something.
I think we've got to do a little more Scandinavian travel here. We're not too smart up on that, are we?
Well, the best way and the most secure way to make any money during the gold rush, you know, if you got up there and you struck it rich, that's great. But Seattle very quickly discovered that there was money to be made in supplying the gold rushers, the Argonauts. So Cooper and Levy was a store down on Front Street. And,
Commercial Street.
on Commercial Street, off Commercial Street.
Well, Commercial runs right into front. It's First Avenue South.
Mm.
This is the southeast corner of that intersection. And some of those stones are still there, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
And so we have
Yeah, there they are.
and that's about all that remains of that block, is that the rest of it has all been replaced by the new building to the north.
Was Cooper and Levy involved in the synagogue?
They were founders of Temple de Hirsch.
Huh? Temples de Hirsch, were they?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So he's here for reasons, you see. Doing the video, and then he's got the deeper knowledge. All right.
So this was taken last year when First Avenue was under construction, which sort of matched the original. I kind of like the dirt surface of the original, and we went back and found a rather enlivening photo. It was either this, or if you've walked down on First Avenue, right about this spot, there's a guy with a football, with a Nerf football, and he'll throw it. And so you walk up and down First Avenue, and he happily throws it to you, and then accepts contributions for the joy of throwing that football. He is there now. He's there virtually every day, and it was either a choice of construction or the guy with the Nerf football, so I chose construction. Well, we're up high here. We're on, I think, the 33rd floor of Smith Tower. And this is a unique perspective for its time, because Smith Tower was not quite complete. They were still finishing up the exterior cladding, so photographer Frank Noel climbed up to the 33rd floor, pointed his camera north, and saw for the first time from this spot Queen Anne with Queen Anne High School, a little piece of Lake Union. And if you look closely, you can see down below, oh, and there's St. James, still with its 13, so it's still got its dome. And down here, you can see the Rainier Club and the little Methodist dome. The big Methodist dome.
Oh, it's still there.
It's still there. So if we look at it today from a higher perspective of Smith Tower, watch for Lake Union, keep your eye out for Queen Anne High School and Wallingford in the far distance, but also maintain a focus on the Rainier Club, and that'll keep you sort of centered.
Busy. I love that new building. We're going to see that again or not?
We are going to see it again. Yeah, there's alongside the Columbia Tower, there's a new building called the F5 building, and we'll come back to it and talk about it.
It's sort of like the new tower in Manhattan.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, this is Seattle's first synagogue.
Shalom.
And yes, it is. And it was right across the street from today's town hall where the Exeter House stands today. And so
No, the Exeter House is this town.
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, the Exeter House.
No, you said the town hall.
Well, I meant town, I get confused,
You
Paul.
do.
My senility takes
No,
over where
you
yours
know, you
ends.
know it all. It's just that you're so anxious to share it that you speak too quickly sometimes. It's all right.
It's right across the street from town hall where the Exeter House stands now. Is that good? Did I do it?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
So now this is your first test, Jewish Historical Society. Name a couple of the early members of this synagogue, and why for bonus points. Why did this synagogue fall apart so quickly?
Raise your hands, please.
I can answer the second.
You can answer both of those questions. Shall we let your historian who's written about Capitol Hill tell you right now, or do you want to take some guesses? So,
None of you are informed in these matters?
oh boy.
Oh boy, this is sad. You better get to teaching these people. I think we should get a lecture series together.
No, they'd have to buy the book, Family of Strangers, and it's not here for sale.
Okay, so let's
That's strange, isn't it?
one of our first, certainly one of a very, I think one of the first Jewish mayors on the West Coast.
Only Jewish mayor.
The only Jewish mayor on the West Coast in the
Well, I don't know
80s.
about the West Coast, the only Jewish one in Seattle.
Only
I
one in
don't know
Seattle.
about-
Now, what was his tenure? How long was he mayor?
Not
Gatzer.
very- Not very long.
So
I
it
don't
was a
remember.
2-year term, like
Yeah.
Bertha Landis?
Right, but yeah, it wasn't very long.
Well,
Swell guy though, Gatzer.
he was a swell guy,
Good man.
and this was opened in 92, just before the 93 Depression, which sort of leveled everything and made everyone sad and life difficult. So Gassert, and I think Firth was also a member, and this was a reform temple, because when they opened it, they played Bach at the dedication.
Good taste.
And within a few years, a division opened up. I know you can't imagine this, but a division opened up in the synagogue because immigrants coming in were much more conservative than Gatzert and Firth. And so they could not solve the divisions, and the temple closed. So it was done. But Gatzert moved up onto the hill and began.
Well, Bicker Holland was the first
Bicker
synagogue
Holland.
opened in 1892, so it was opened around that time. That was when all the Eastern Europeans were coming in.
Oh, those
And
Eastern
they,
Europeans.
right, and they opened. But they debated, I mean, the big division was, which sounds
Here,
really
take this,
ridiculous, was whether men were gonna wear hats or not wear hats. And that was the big division.
Wow.
And they decided, when Temple de Hirsch opened, men were not gonna wear hats, and that was it. But when Obaf Shalom opened, it was still debated, and it was sort of mixed. It wasn't completely reformed. It was a little bit
But to
mixed.
play Bach at the opening,
Yeah, well,
that's right there. You're talking about some radical stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's look at it today.
You know what they played? What Bach piece?
Oh, I'm looking at the original column, and it says, let's see, it looks like, I don't know what it was.
Well, I don't remember knowing it, so,
I don't even remember hearing that.
Yeah.
well, somehow I got it in here in this article.
Bach's
I love
Preludes.
Bach so much, I made it.
On the synagogue's new organ, it was Bach's Preludes.
Sounds good.
Preludes, you know.
Sounds good. That's why I was.
We could all play those a little bit.
So here we're looking, if we imagine we're looking through Town Hall, and there's Exeter across the street, we'd be looking right at the front of the temple that was originally there.
Okay, guys.
And here's the original column that I copied just to so you can self-test.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But look at this. I love this. This is what I do like. Is this photo? That's why I put this up here. There's the Denny Hotel, and you're looking down across Seattle to the north, and here's perched right there is the synagogue. But look at the sweep from Capitol Hill down, and then Denny Hill's still there.
Yeah, very lovely.
Well, we take a little leap forward in time to the creation of the Aurora Bridge.
Now, you remember, you're all invited to ask questions.
Yeah, just shout them out if you have get our attention.
Uncertain about something.
What's the name of the Aurora Bridge?
It's the George Washington Memorial Bridge. This is 1931, the year before the bridge opened, and they were moving this marvelous four-master, the Monongahela, which was made in built in Glasgow in '82, an ocean-going freighter, and they were moving it finally after several years out of Lake Union, sold it off to a Vancouver logging company where it became a barge and only lasted a few more years. But they wanted to get it out because afterwards they would have had to chop down the masts or turn it sideways or something.
Did 99 connect to the Aurora Bridge when this was built?
Did they what?
Did 99 connect to the Aurora Bridge when this was built?
That's
nearly. It was all pretty much concurrent. And very soon after they built the bridge, they started to improve the highway north of the bridge. And there was a lot of debate at the time about what to do with the park. And it was finally decided that the highway could go through the park, that is Woodland Park. So it was all happening very quickly.
How did people get across the canal before the bridge was built?
Fremont Bridge opened in 1960.
Yeah, Fremont Bridge, and the Ballard Bridge too.
On the Ballard Bridge.
Yeah. You can still choose.
So let's look at the same spot today. This is 31, spring of 31. Today, with the gap closed, this was I like this photo. Paul likes this photo, but I was slightly chastened because the only thing I could find to replace the Monongahela was and it did raise the span of the Fremont Bridge when it went through, so the mast was high enough.
I want to make a point about this picture, and I've done it before. I don't necessarily favor this picture, but I think it's really lovely. And of course, it has all sorts of picturesque qualities. You have the boats and the water and the greenery and the large structural cleanly lines of the bridge and all of that. And so Jean, in being able to pick the stories in the book, he didn't do this self-consciously. He did it by reason of his taste. And he managed to then choose subjects that allowed him to make lovely pictures like this. So that means that when you buy the second copy of this book, which is to be sent to your relatives in Peoria, then know that this is a wonderful cityscape, inventory of Seattle cityscapes for you to share with your relatives.
Now, I'm gonna interrupt you, Paul, because for the last 15 years, Paul and I have done lectures together on Washington State history and Seattle history. And I'd say probably 3/4 of the photos that I chose in the book, while they do have picturesque qualities, they're photos that I'm very familiar with because of Paul's repeated use of them in all of our lectures together.
You mean lectures, huh?
Yep. And Monongahela was
Well,
one.
that's true. I was involved in the genesis.
You were indeed.
Yeah.
Well, it all comes back to you. Let's all praise you, John. Thank you.
All right, let's have a little applause for me. You're not applauding right there. Okay.
So, this is the Taft Key.
Oh, boy.
And it's significant because we're going to move now from below the Aurora Bridge up to the top. And the Taft Key gets us there. It was all the gold on the Taft Key was found in the claim of George Carmack, who was the first to discover gold in the Yukon. And he took his gold, he took 20-odd gold nuggets, and he mounted them on Alaskan marble and made a telegraph key of pure gold, and then gave it to President Taft as a gift. In 1909, Taft used it to open AYP, the Alaska Yukon Pacific Exposition in Seattle. And he used it, and it was used by presidents several times in the years following. Specifically, when they opened the Aurora Bridge in 1932, on February 22nd, which was George Washington's birthday, 200th birthday, at that point, Herbert Hoover was still in office. And he was standing in D.C. with his finger perched over the Taft Key, waiting to press it at 2:57 in the afternoon to inaugurate the festivities and send off the fire hoses and etc. Well, there's no real communication between Hoover and any intermediary, except he knows there's a time he's going to punch that key. And what he doesn't know is that the state's governor, Roland Hartley, who was from Everett, and Roland hated the cross-state. They hated the idea of 99.
Hated Democrats.
Hated Democrats. He was a rural guy. He hated being in the city. He got there, and here's what he found. On either side of the bridge, thousands of Seattleites were gathered, ready to storm the bridge and celebrate the opening of this new link between the North and the South, and this wonderful new bridge and highway. And so Roland Hartley was pontificating and in fact taking full credit for the creation of this bridge, because he saw the exuberance of the crowd. So he says, it was all me, baby. Well, he's in the midst of this long speech, and at 2:57, the button was pushed, interrupting Roland Hartley, and the crowd cheering streamed out onto the bridge. The flags unfurled, the fireboat sent streamers into the air, and Hartley never finished his speech. And
these crowds then went at each other, and went through each other and went to the opposite end of the bridge.
So here
Nobody
we are.
was injured.
There were no injuries.
How did it take this?
Well, sometimes when I have to get into a spot and it's just there's no vantage which will allow me to repeat the old photo. Because the hillside of Queen Anne, looking north, is covered with shrubbery and trees. So without a chainsaw, I can't do my business. So I have a 21-foot tall telescopic pole, and I put the camera up on the pole, and I have my remote, and I shoot and wait for green buses and dump trucks to pass by.
Those two vehicles together are really nice.
Well, I found this photo of Herbert Hoover pressing the Taft Key to open the George Washington Memorial Bridge.
That's actually for the George Washington?
That is.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, there's a wonderful exhibit. The key is now at the Smithsonian, so you can visit it there and pay homage.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I never have.
I know somebody said, yeah.
Well, they were agreeing the Smithsonian was a nice place to be.
Sorry.
Well, John F. Kennedy's pressed the Taft Key. It was the last time it was used to open the Seattle World's Fair, 30 years later. And we have one column in the Times, and this is where a personal favorite did intercede, Paul, so I confess to this one, but I love it so. Young Paula Dahl, at 6 years old, was the 9 millionth visitor to the fair in the weeks before it closed. And she was found by Alan Stein, who wrote a book about the World's Fair, and in her elementary school in Issaquah. She still has the 9 millionth sign. So I want to call your attention to this lovely 6-year-old girl, her very proud parents, this magnificent and enormous dog, and her very embittered sister.
Right behind her, right?
Right behind her.
It's a shame that siblings can't get together in moments like that.
It is.
Where are we here, Gene?
We are at First and Spring. We're looking down south towards Madison, where the Seattle fire began. This photograph was taken by William Boyd, a photographer who grabbed his camera when he saw the fire and actually snapped a handful of the photos that exist of the fire, and probably lost most of his studio to the fire. Other photographers were grabbing their equipment and racing away, and William Boyd was dashing towards the fire and taking pictures. So we have a handful of photos of the fire actually raging, and this is one of the classics. You can see up there the tall building up on the sort of center left, that's the Frye Opera House. And I always wonder who that fellow is standing there at the very apex of the Frye. This is the crowd.
The guy up on top.
The guy up on top. This is the crowd looking down. Nearly 30 acres were burned, or 30 blocks, 120 acres. And the everything in the photo here disappeared, was turned to ashes. No one died in the Seattle fire, though they say rather Panglossianly Panglossianly? They say with Pangloss, a million rats. And here we are today, finding the prospect of that same.
That's a lovely picture too, with that globe up there and those arms coming out and the shadows cutting across it with the stripes on the pavement.
And this sort of
It's a lovely
represents
picture.
the city's resolve the day after the fire, that morning, June 6th, 1889. The next day, 600 Seattle residents met in the armory between 3rd and 4th on Union, which had not been touched. And they all gathered in the armory, and Mayor Moran was there, and they all they came to a resolution that the city would be built. This is the ashes, it's still smoking downtown. They came to a resolution they would rebuild Seattle in brick and stone. And that
wider
was
streets too.
with wider streets. And that was the following morning after the fire burned down. And so it gives you pause. You think they might have been just waiting for the wood structures to go so they could be replaced with something more permanent and perhaps less, what would you say, less decrepit.
Volatile.
And volatile. Yeah. So this is a wonderful photo of brick and stone.
Yeah.
Aftermath of the fire, we're looking at the Occidental Hotel, and it's this monolith at the.
Okay, anybody know where that was, Occidental Hotel? This triangular shape?
Second and yes.
Huh?
Second and yes.
That was the back of it. Yeah.
Anybody know?
Second and yes, sir. He.
Or
Yeah.
second, yes.
It is.
That particular view, however, is from Front Street, looking southeast through the hotel. So Second and Yesler is, well, here's a contemporary sort of shot.
Right. We're looking towards the structure there, and you can see that the front of that structure of the Occidental Hotel is to this day the prow of the sinking ship garage.
You know the sinking ship garage, don't you?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So the Occidental Hotel was replaced on the same footprint shortly after, within a couple of years of the fire, by the Seattle Hotel. And the Occidental was the premier hotel of its day. It was considered by locals the best hotel north of San Francisco. Well, Seattle Hotel replaced it, and it lasted until the Seattle Hotel was replaced by the sinking ship garage.
That's the Pioneer Building on the left. And First Avenue, of course, is cutting across the intersection with Yesler Way. You gotta leave?
I must leave, but I will see you
Oh, we'll
again.
be sad to see you go.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, you guys.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll see you at your talk. Or is that
Your
our
talk.
talk? Our talk, yeah.
Your time.
Okay, sorry, you guys.
So
for interrupting.
here we are, and we're going to take a little look, and Paul will describe for you the sensitivity of the architecture of the sinking ship.
The building of the sinking ship garage was controversial after the fire of the Pioneer Building. And so the local preservationists resisted. And in fact, the building of the sinking ship became really a powerful motivation for the founding of the preservation societies hereabouts. And this is the time, Gene?
Well, this is the building of the sinking ship was I just called it I actually had a nice little phrase for it, the sinking ship that launched 1,000 faces. Because Victor Steinbrook showed up and was so appalled at the loss of the Seattle Hotel that when the Pike Place market was threatened several years later, Victor led the charge to save the market. So if we had not lost that Seattle Hotel, there would have been nothing to point to and say, we're not going to let that happen again.
Good point. Now look at the building across the street, across Yesler, and you see the basket handle windows there, the tops, the arches. Now, when the people who built the garage answered the complaints of the locals, I said, you don't understand, we're building this garage in sensitive symmetry or responsible concern for the qualities of the old hotel. We're putting in basket handle. And you can see them there, you see them? You can't see them, can you?
No, I pointed them out, I used my finger.
That's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
What year was it built, the parking lot?
61.
Right about in time for the World's Fair.
Yeah.
Many improvements were happening.
Well, that was what happened. A lot of things were motivated by the fair. And although there's a lot of good stuff connected with the fair, there was also a lot of modern junk.
So this is the market from 1907, and it's the market that was saved.
Yeah.
And Victor Steinbrook has his park at the far north end, and that's why.
Right.
Where is this?
All right, we're going to give a surprise to anybody who can, an award to anybody who can tell us where this is.
It's Capitol Hill.
Well, Capitol Hill's good, but it's not good enough. You've got to give us the street or something.
15?
Huh?
15, maybe?
Speak up.
15th?
No?
12.
No?
23rd?
We'll give the prize.
Shall we give you a date? Why don't we start with a date?
Okay.
This is in the mid-1950s. 1950s.
What was happening on Melrose Way in the mid-1950s? Freeway, who said that? Who did? Two of you did. Two of you said it.
And there
Well, that's
is
fortunate because we have two.
napkins.
I guess it's one, I'm sorry. You'll have to break it up.
I will defer.
What?
I will defer to this young
Well,
lady.
that's very
If you sign
respected.
it, if you sign it.
Yeah, we'll sign it.
Yeah, Paul will sign his napkin. Paul
Gene
often
will
signs his
sign
napkin.
it too. Okay, give me the pen.
Well, can we do it at the end of the show?
No, we'll sit here with some napkins.
I'm going to make a little drawing, which you're going to draw on it.
All right, where are we here, Gene?
Oh, well, this is our second test.
Oh,
So I have a funny story that is attached to this, and I believe this is this temple was designed by J. Marcus Pritica, and it is. Does anyone recognize it? It stands today. What is it today? Langston Hughes. You got it. So, and here's the Langston Hughes from that same perspective. What a beautiful place this is. Now, we tried to get this in the book. And I tried so hard last summer to get this original photo, and we couldn't get more than I mean, it's passable for a projection, but it's not good enough for print. And I tried through the Historical Society. The Jewish Historical Society tried to help us, and University of Washington just would not get me this photo.
he's
They
not
never
very happy with the
responded.
university, you can see.
What happened to that city?
That synagogue, ooh, that's an interesting story. Would someone like to take over here? Because I have to confess, I love this picture, and I threw it into this show, but that's my question for you. What I think is a Sephardic synagogue. No? It's Ashkenazi? So what happened to it? I know, I read some of the early history in the archives. I think it lasted
It
for...
moved to Seward Park.
People moved, and so it moved.
So
Yeah,
just
go and follow
Demographics
people.
changed.
the demographics changed.
And you had to be able to walk to it, so.
I did see the new synagogue in Seward Park. I remember seeing the photo of the new temple in the archives.
What was the synagogue? Conservative or Orthodox?
I think they were Orthodox, weren't they?
Bigger home was Orthodox.
Okay, well, we'll talk if I can ever get the original of this photo. Because I think that's a marvelous.
It is.
I would love to get a picture of the synagogue with, it's really difficult, but I'd love to get people in there. I'd love to get some congregants, but maybe that was.
Doesn't the Historical Society have a wedding photo in front of this?
I think we do. Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah.
Track it down and we'll do a Langston,
Yeah.
because we've never done the Langston Hughes.
Okay, we'll work on that.
No, we could though. You guys know Howard Droker, right?
Yes.
I'm going to credit myself with something. Howard was working on starting this organization with others in the early, when?
50 years.
When?
50s,
Not that early.
60s,
90s?
We started
Well, anyway.
when it was at the University of Washington.
when it was at University of Washington.
Early 80s.
Yeah, early 80s,
And
right?
this organization started in 1968.
Yeah, well, I'm talking, well, anyway, he was collecting old photos for your organization, and he needed some help. And I was there with my camera, and I had high-quality Panatomic film and good darkroom, so I did it for him. I copied your first historic photos from families and stores and stuff. So when you look at your collection, you may also think about me. Thank you. What's that?
Definitely think about it.
Thank you. Howard's a sweet guy.
Yeah.
So we're going to move downtown now and look at a photo of a structure that was built in 1908, a federal building, and another structure that lasted to just before the World's Fair. It was torn down in '58. This is the post office at 3rd and Union. Down, these wonderful sandstone columns came from Chuckanut. The sandstone steps, the front of the building was quite lovely, and if you were in this North Business District in Seattle, you would say, meet me at the steps, and everyone knew exactly where you went. And so it was kind of one of those marvelous intermediary spaces that you can, part public, part private, and you can grace it with your presence. Well, it was torn down in '58 because pigeons were pooping on it and staining the sandstone. They decided there's no way to clean sandstone of pigeon poop, so we'll replace it with something impermeable. And there it is. As a PI architectural critic called in 2007, the filing cabinet lying on its side.
Insult to the body.
But across the street's Benaroya, so there's a lovely modern building to make up for.
Guys, would you pass this to the winner, please? Thank you very much.
So that's frameable.
I don't know.
We are now looking at Hooverville. This is about 250 of the houses that were on the pier down below Smith Tower. You can see Smith Tower up north, taken from the B.F. Goodrich building looking north. And
Go ahead.
question?
She was yawning now.
We'll speed it up.
I'm about, yeah.
And the Port of Seattle let me up on a lift truck. And we took this photo maybe 3 years ago.
Gene, can you go back and forth so they can look at the Smith Tower?
Oh,
I don't
Clay
know
wants
if
you
we
to
have
look at
time
the
for that.
Smith Tower. There we go, and there it appears again.
Little baby.
Change of skyline.
Where's this, you guys?
Look close, what does it say on the streetcar? Finney Ridge.
All right.
Well, this is coming down off Finney Ridge. And this is the last North Seattle streetcar. A year later, it was gone. All the downtown streetcars have been replaced by trackless trolleys and motorized buses. And this was the last northbound streetcar, and its motorman took the photo. And we had to go back and find something in 34th and Fremont.
This is Fremont, 34th.
What year was this?
This is 41.
40 or 41. You confused me, see that?
Sorry.
It's either 40 or 41. Yeah.
Within a year, they were all gone, and the oil companies were delighted.
Yeah.
Today, we had to go back and find something that would stand into the streetcar. And in place of the streetcar, we have 2 women walking abreast.
Yeah, more than
That's my friend.
How many of you have gone?
That's your friend?
On the bike on the right, Wonder Woman. Yeah.
Really?
I was right next to her. I'm out of frame.
What did you say? The last thing you said was you were there too?
I'm out of frame.
No one has admitted to being in frame or even out of frame in the 32 shows we've done so far. So
Which one is Wonder Woman?
Wonder Woman.
All the way on the right, on the bike.
right here.
Oh, in the red, huh?
Yeah.
That's clothes, isn't it?
It's not close.
That's
It's a body. Oh my goodness.
So do you do it every year, or was
No, I've only done it
2017
once.
only that once?
Oh boy, it's a wonderful event, actually. Gene, what's this?
Well, this is the Go Hing Festival on King Street in 1921. And, you know, this was the Chinese community as it rebounded from many years of expulsion and prejudice, had a festival in the early 20s, and you see the lion dancer and the celebrants here. Well, I went back to that same spot and I found the Seattle Kung Fu Club with the master John Liang, who is standing in the middle of his group, and we took over King Street. This guy is a Seattle cop, so he said, no problem, close the thing down. And here's Sifu John. He is 80 years old. I think he's 81 now. 80 when we took that photo, surrounded by his school. So, and they do lion dancing every Chinese New Year's, so they just brought everything out for this photo, which was kind of delightful. This is the story of disappearance. You think the viaduct is gone. Well, this is a photo of a river that has disappeared. The Black River, and it used to drain Lake Washington before the locks. And what is this, 1906?
I think it's 1908, but I could be wrong by 2 years. I'm not sure.
A group of Seattle canoe enthusiasts were trying to go from Lake Washington all the way down
More
to...
like romantics. So young couples, they all got these canoes, and their goal was to go from the lake to Elliott Bay, and they didn't make it. And by the time the sun came down, they had to get out of their canoes and trudge across the farmlands down where Georgetown is now. So they didn't quite make it.
The Black River no longer exists because the Lake Washington was lowered by 9 feet and the river disappeared. The Duwamish tribe had a number of settlements along the Black River which had been in place for many, you know, probably thousands of years. And so when the Black River disappeared, so did many of those settlements, which is a sore point for the Duwamish, who never actually even got tribal status. So they, yes?
Well, so it went from Lake Washington to the Duwamish River?
It did, we called it the Duwamish River. We dredged out that long channel of the Duwamish River, which was almost a series of oxbows. It was 9 miles long, reduced to 4.5 miles long, dredged down to 50 feet, and was actually the biggest earth-moving project in Seattle, bigger by far than Denny Hill. So when they dredged the Duwamish for those 9 miles, straightening it out, deepening it, and flinging the bottom land and the soil up onto the sides, that was, but that didn't do the tribe any favors either. So. Well, here it is, we estimate today. And there is Carl of the Brown Bear Car Wash, standing in front of McDonald's on Rainier Avenue South.
And we're looking north on Rainier Avenue South, so the lake is beyond that bridge in the distance. And
the airport is, yeah, over to the right.
Right.
Not far from my birthplace.
Changing that again.
Yes. These are the more faces that sold 1,000 books, 10,000 books.
Yeah, they were a very good young couple to me, these brother and sister, the Brown sister and Brown brother. And I used this picture on the cover of my first Seattle Now and Then. And it was very popular.
Yeah.
And sold, I think, I don't remember how many, many thousands. And that really took care of me financially for a couple, 3 years.
Shall we have them guess what this structure is crossing Lake Union? Now, let's give a little clue here, first of all. This is a bay. This is a kind of an inset bay, like a bulb.
It's a freshwater bay.
A freshwater bay coming off of Lake Union toward the west. What is that? That's Capitol Hill. And right here, surprisingly, what might that be? Any guesses?
It looks like a place to tie up boats or something, or boat storage.
Is that the inner?
Can't hear you.
Boat
Would that
storage?
be?
Boat storage?
Yeah.
Well, they do a lot of that now down there, farther north on the lake.
Yeah.
Is that the Viaduct?
It is not the Viaduct. This is Westlake.
When it was still on,
stilts.
On the trestles.
On the trestles, yeah.
That is Westlake. Beyond it, there's considerable amount of the lake, but we're looking at Westlake because right here where these kids are standing, let's see where we are. It's all been filled in. It's all that land has been filled in for several blocks. And these are the two neighbor daughters, two of my neighbor's daughters, Tia and Liana. And we took this photo for the MOHA exhibition in 2011, and I brought them back last year, and I thought we should do a now and then. Tia's a Rough Rider at Roosevelt, and she drives.
Which one's Tia? I forget.
Tia's the one on the left.
Okay.
And it's terrifying that Tia drives.
And where's that?
That's down, it's like Aloha, just a couple blocks, maybe 3 blocks from Westlake, where Westlake runs today. On the west side of Lake Union.
The southwest corner.
Southwest corner.
Of the lake. See, but the lake's gone there, and instead there are buildings, and
So that's
then
all
you've
filled.
got.
This is all filled. Where they're standing is, blocks have been filled. No more lake.
And how about where Westlake is, on the other side?
That's pretty much still the lake.
So it's a
Westlake is
big
still pretty
expanse.
much a border between the developed land
On
and
the
filled
other
land and
Do you know what that building is in the back of
Western Mill. That was David Denny's lumber mill in the early 1880s, and, which he had to sell out, and then he went bankrupt with the 83.
The Panic of '93.
93.
93. But he opened it in the early 80s. I think 84, maybe 82. Do you know which one it was? No. Okay. Guys, I think we're almost done. Are you? I think, Gene, where are we?
We're most of the way through.
Okay.
So here we are looking at the Koala in 1948. It's about 12 years old when this photo was taken, moving through the locks from Lake Union. And if you look up on the upper decks, you'll see that every single circular window is full of faces, and the upper deck is, the outside deck is full of people going on this excursion through the locks. There's a lovely little tugboat pulling it through, and at the very tip top there's the Koala wheelhouse, which was extraordinarily inefficient. But
We had
quite
sound
lovely.
effects with this, huh?
We do. So we're going to have Clay stand up now, and Clay rode the Koala.
How many of you rode the Koala yourself? There's several in the room. I was fortunate to ride it in the last month of its run from Seattle to Bremerton. I was in my high school stage band, and we were going to the Olympic College Festival with Quincy Jones over in Bremerton. And it was dark and drafty and spider webs everywhere. You couldn't go to the upper floors. It was definitely on its last legs. And when the motor turned on, you could hear it loudly. It was almost as though the ferry was going to fall apart. The walls were I remember it to this day. This was June of 1967. But people love the Koala. People
Now we have
love the
another
Koala.
award, the person who can imitate play the best on the sound of the. Anyone want to try it? I'll go up. It's a whoa, 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 whoa. Anyone try it? Anybody?
No, too many shy people. That's a pretty rasty.
That's a rasty thing. Yeah. So
Well,
is that it? No, it isn't.
No, there's more. We can go home now, Paul.
No, let's do it. Well, I want to start.
Okay, well then let's continue. So this is another example of trying to find a substitute for this marvelous photo of Koala. And I lucked out. I called up the box and said, is anyone coming through that's big and might stand in for that classic photo? And they said, yes, the Turner Joy. And for those historians in the audience, what is the significance of the Turner Joy? It's a big one.
Military historian.
Is that a battleship?
That is a destroyer.
Or a destroyer?
The Turner Joy, and for the first time, the last show we did, which was a senior home, we found someone who was on the Turner Joy in 1964, in early August.
The Gulf of Tonkin.
Gulf of Tonkin. The Turner Joy went to the aid of the USS Maddox.
You betcha.
I
will wear it with pride.
And was involved in the beginning of the Vietnam War, a real desperate and tragic story that went on for a number of years after that. So the Turner Joy is a Bremerton ship, a museum ship, and this is the Turner Joy, the 951, steaming off the coast of Vietnam. The fellow who spoke with Clay and I went to a senior home, and this guy sort of raised his hand and says, I was on the ship. And I said, well, I understand there was some controversy attached. And he was adamant that we were right. I decided not to pursue the subject. It was best to just let it ride.
It was not a fake.
It was not a fake.
In his mind.
You talking about the war?
The war. Yeah, no, it's Turner Joy. Look it up and you'll see there were sort of attacks and counterattacks, and the truth is we started it because we did some nasty stuff, and some Vietnamese gunboats, how dare they come into their own waters and send off a couple torpedoes, and then it's a complex, but you know, we're pretty culpable in the story of how that war began, and Johnson.
But he didn't agree with that, right?
He was pretty adamant that it was all fake news. So, well, here we have
a red cap on by any chance?
Here we are looking at a picture that Clay Eals took in West Seattle of the bridge of the Koala. It's all that remains of that gorgeous ship, and there's a little behind this structure. There's I think the drivetrain. These enormous, they look like a dinosaur spine.
This is at Salty's on Alki along Harbor Avenue. Jerry Kingan, the owner of it, on the very last day before the whole thing was being junked in Tacoma, went down there and bought pieces of it. And he has a unique sense of public art. And so these pieces are in his parking lot at Salty's, and you can go walk into them, walk right up to them.
Right through it at Seattle. So it's
I once sold a piece of sculpture to Jerry Keenan.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that?
I did not know that. I know you.
Why are you shaking your hands like you did?
No, I was nodding as though you were going to say that you
in the office
provided him.
Helix, in the front door, we had plastered Paris Jesus Christ. And we had them right there at the entrance. Not that we were Christians, but that it was available for 50 cents or something, and we put it there. And when we were closing down the Helix, he wanted it for his restaurant.
Well, he was opening the Red Robin chain at that time. wasn't he?
Red Robin's already open.
Okay, he had one in the U District.
Didn't he have the original Red Robin down by the
Yeah.
University Bridge?
He bought it. He bought it from, get this, Ivor Haglund. Ivor had bought it from the couple of brothers, Jewish brothers, who owned it together. They were sweet guys. I forget their names now. One of them was a boxer, and they were great guys.
But that's when the Red Robin was just a single restaurant.
What's that?
Just a single
Yeah, it
restaurant.
was just a single thing, yeah, a little place. Did you go to it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, you went to it a lot.
Sure.
We probably went there at the same time.
Probably.
But Paul, you also created a photo exhibit for Salties. There are about 20 historic photos of West Seattle
I
down
forgot
there.
about that when I walked in there and saw those, and I said, those are familiar. I did a good job, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Well, here are a couple Red
I
Robins.
tried to look like the present president, what's his name? Trump. And I said it, didn't I? I said, I did a good job, didn't I?
I had the perfect segue, Paul.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's a couple of Red Robins right here. This is April 2nd, 1953, just before opening day of the Viaduct.
Yeah, very nice.
Oh, I thought it was closing.
This is the opening day. So let's look at it
Yeah.
before it closed, when traffic is, and I want you to pay particular attention. This is about spring of 17, so it's a full year plus before the Viaduct shut down permanently. But here we are, and I got a red car in there to take the picture. In the background, this is, we're returning to this building that we threatened to come back to.
Yeah.
And that's the F5 building, now called, I think it was originally called the Mark. And it was built by developer Kevin Daniels, who went to ZGF Architects in Seattle and said, I want a building that represents, well, let's take a look at it down 5th Avenue, 4th Avenue. So we're looking at it, we can see the reflection of the Methodist dome below. I love this building. I think it's just kind of delightful, and I had no idea what it actually represented. But look at that sort of wonderful sort of sweep of lightning going down the side.
It's kind of sexy.
It is kind of sexy. Well, Kevin Daniels asked ZGF to create a building that had the qualities of his favorite actress. And as they were building it, they put her portrait full-sized in the lobby. And so you're looking at an architectural portrait of Audrey Hepburn. And look at how she's holding her cigarette holder. And check out the building one more time. So,
can anybody sing Moon River here? If you want to give a little, all right, that's all right. Moon River, wider than, Jean can sing it. Lovely voice, Jean. It's hard to stop people from singing. How we doing, Gene?
We're closing in rapidly.
All right.
We're looking now at the oldest structure in Seattle.
Really?
This is it.
Yeah. What is it, though? Come
The
on,
Moon
guys.
River Inn.
Huh? What is it?
Yes, Moon River Inn.
The Moon River Inn.
Naughty, naughty.
It is in West Seattle.
What? It's West Seattle. Yeah. What famous fish merchant had something to do with it?
What famous what?
Fish merchant. Who spent a lot of his youth in it, actually. Ivor, yeah. This was his mother's home.
And before it was his mother's home,
Yeah.
it was rebuilt by David Maynard and his wife Catherine.
Well, no, it wasn't rebuilt, it was
Well,
built.
it was rebuilt from, because their original house burned down.
Yeah, that's a different house though.
So it was built on the same foot. Okay. So David Maynard built this place, and it ended up being sold to the Hanson family, and the Hansons were Ivar's mom, who's in the white dress on the porch. The photo, the retake is in the 90s. You're looking at Ivar's mom, his grandmother, grandfather, We don't know who that is, but this is probably the Norwegian Snidely Whiplash and some child peeing on the corner. And we went back there, and Clay was for a number of years the director of the Southwest Seattle Historical Society, and he gathered some of his members and stood in front of that location. And it's still there, although completely unmarked. So there, at the end of the street, there's a little plaque that says, somewhere on this street, there once stood a house. We're not going to tell you where. This is it. And
But the address is in the book.
So there's a house on Capitol Hill that claims to be the oldest.
Speak up.
Has a plaque on it in Capitol Hill, a house that claims to be the oldest house in Seattle. So what's the discrepancy?
a house on Capitol Hill.
I really doubt it. But can you remember where it is?
Sort of on the west side of the hill.
West side of Capitol Hill. I mean, I've never heard that, and I'm certain. Have you ever heard of that?
No,
This
there's
is
one
the
on
woman who wrote the history of
There's one
Capitol
on Harvard that was 1890 that's still around.
Yeah,
but-
this is from the 1860s. I doubt it very much that that's correct.
They weren't building a lot on Capitol Hill in the 1860s.
No,
So
that was
that's
forest.
one thing that suggests it might be.
That was forest then.
It was all old growth timber. Yesler was still bringing logs down to his mill, so it would be, but we'll send us a photo. Maybe we'll debunk it or credit it together. But this West Seattle house was.
We'll give you a prize.
This was David Maynard, so it's, maybe they aren't including West Seattle. Some people would say that West Seattle is its own town.
So, given that fish and chips is a safari convention more or less that came to England and then to America, Ivers or Spuds?
What's that?
Given that we're talking about West Seattle and Ivers, Ivers or Spuds, who makes the best fish?
Well, you mean you have to choose between what they like the most? Now that's an interesting question because that was actual controversy within the Spud community in West Seattle.
Exactly.
Because when Ivor bought that place, he started to serve Ivor's chowder. And they objected, so he simply put the Spud name on it and sold his chowder. And they said, it's great, we love it. We love coming back to it.
That's great. And I want to say thank you, gentlemen, so very, very much for joining us this evening.
How do you know we're through?
This is the last slide.
Because I'm the operations manager.
Well, let's finish off here with this last picture of Princess Angeline, who was actually named Kiki Soblu, the daughter of Chief Seattle. She was named, monikered by Catherine Maynard, Princess Angeline, because as being the daughter of the chief. Well, this is her house below Western, and with Paul and Ron Edge working together, they figured out pretty close to where. So Ron, one of our column's contributors, is sitting about where Princess Angeline's porch is. It's in a little area right between the Pike Place Market Garage and the Fixed Medora building, the condo. And so there's this little green belt filled with bamboo that goes all the way down to the waterfront from Western. You can't walk it, it's a cliff. But
You can see it if you go to Lowell's in the market and go to the second floor and look out the window straight down is this
Can you
capsule.
recommend something from the menu?
The seafood.
So our last picture
Seafood.
is of Princess Angeline, a very famous shot from the early 1890s, looking up towards First Avenue and crossed by Pike. So she's really in Post Alley now today. Alongside her is the studio portrait of her dad, Chief Seattle. And we feature them together in the book because we managed to gather a couple of descendants. We're looking at Mary Lou Slaughter, who's the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Kiki Soblu, and Ken Workman, who's the great-great-great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle through his second wife. And they're wearing cedar shawls that were created by Mary Lou. She's one of our region's most acclaimed basket weavers. They actually designed the Duwamish Longhouse parquet based on her basketry and the designs in her work. And Mary Lou, there's Paul, there's John Leong, and Mary Lou in this photo, which was taken last spring, is also 80.
What are you talking about?
There's
Where
3
am I?
80
I
of
don't
us.
see me.
Well, you're here. And that is almost our conclusion, except to say that as I was taking this photo, Clay was standing behind me and took a picture of me taking this picture. And as I was taking the photo, Ken whipped around several times. And
Go ahead.
And finally, we were down at Ivar's having some happy hour afterwards. And I said, Ken, what were you so jittery about? He said, well, I felt like someone was trying to get through. And both Clay and I said, well, there was no one behind you. And he said, oh yeah, well, they kept tapping me in the arm. So he has now been telling the tale that his distant cousin found him in the alley and tapped him on the arm.
So and started a new religion of the tapping chief.
You can talk to Ken about it. I think he might. It's actually, he tells the story very well. And so I think of this book and my work with Paul and Clay as we are seeking to find those similar nudges of history. And the tap on the arm may not be physical, but we certainly feel the emergence of all of these historical places and human beings that lived before us. So thank you very much.
Pieces of paper, and then you can rate us from 1 to 5. 1 to 5. Did they get their papers? No, I guess not.
They'll use napkins.
They use napkins.
Thank you so much.
If you give us a minute, we'll set up here. We take credit card, cash, check, whatever.
You generally want to buy 2.
And be thinking about how you want these guys to inscribe the book for you. It's
Okay,
$49.95 plus $5 sales tax.
I just want to thank you again. Thank you so much. And as a little token of our gratitude, we've given you one of our own books, Distant Replay, about Washington Jewish sports heroes. So enjoy that, both of you. And Clay, there's one for you as well. Thank you.
One of the Dave Eskenazi.